auditing, and state auditing in particular. So, as I was introduced, I go by Kathleen. My name is Kathleen Davies. And I wanted to start today with one of the questions that I've been getting quite frequently, and it is, does experience and qualification in state government auditing and investigation matter for the position of auditor of accounts? And that's for the voters to decide, and I'm here to explain about what my background is and what my experience is and my qualifications. But I will say this, when I'm asked the question, I equate it to if you were building a house and you got a general contractor, would you expect the general contractor to use a plumber to put in the plumbing, or would you have them use something else? Or in public money, if we're building a school district and we have a contract to build that school district, we're going to have an expectation to use a plumber to put the plumbing in. So that's the simple way of putting it. But there is no doubt that the responsibilities and the technical nature of the job are something that you have to rely on somebody for the most part. You're going to have your interests, but it is I'm pleased that we have at least one CPA here today that actually relates to that. Just so I can get through my background, and then we'll open it up for questions for you, because I am experienced in government auditing. This is my very first campaign. I am a professional auditor and investigator by trade. I have over 25 years experience from entry level on up. My last 15 years have been as a director, as a senior staff member, working in the Office of Auditor of Accounts. I am no longer with the Office of Auditor of Accounts, but when I was there, I can speak about some of the accomplishments, the direction we're going, and why I want to run for office, and why I want some new things that I've learned as a result of coming out and actually getting involved in the Democratic Party. Because, as you probably heard, I was my whole adult life unaffiliated, no matter where I was. And to be an independent, unbiased professional auditor. And I also worked around with and audited all types of people, all parties, so on and so forth. And I wanted to have independence, but I was approached by people in the party that assured me that I could declare a party and continue on and be independent and not have to sway towards one particular issue or another. And I felt very comfortable with that. I'm very happy with my decision to declare, and I'm going to tell you, win or lose, I'm staying a Democrat in Delaware. So I want to get that out first of all. My qualifications and how I've used them, I've had them the majority of my career, and I'm a certified public accountant, got that early on in my profession. I'm also a certified information systems auditor. I've used that. I was part of what they call an integrated audit group, which meant that while I was doing financial performance investigations, I was also bringing in those skill sets and developing procedures, because, as we all know, paper goes away, and so you can no longer go out and validate that piece of paper. And then, as you become a more experienced investigator, you realize that piece of paper isn't always what you think it is, because it's so easy to produce fake documents. So it becomes even more and more important that you're in tune and trained with that. Of course, I'm a certified fraud examiner. I've been investigating since I started in the early 90s. I've done it within the audit. I've also done it separately and apart in public reporting. I'm a certified government audit professional, a certified government financial manager as well. All of that, though, that alone is not enough unless we put it into practice. And that means that we have to be able to do financial auditing and understand the government accounting standards, which are very specific. It's a very specific skill set. And also, when you do government auditing, you have to be very in tune with the not-for-profit accounting. That's also a very important factor because of the amount of grant money that goes out. I'm also exceedingly studied up on internal controls. This is usually the part that most people shut down. They're like, oh, no, don't talk abstract about internal controls, but we can make it very, very relatable. And I've trained on that both professionally out there nationally, and also I've trained to volunteer fire companies and things of that nature. I'm very committed to that because I don't believe in auditing just for the sake of auditing. I believe that we need need to try to prevent the fraud, try to make sure the numbers are out there. I'm a strong proponent for transparency. Sometimes when things are done wrong consistently, we have to get out a public report, but it's not meant to be a gotcha. If no one takes those recommendations and moves forward with them, the audit isn't worth a whole lot either. Having said that, that's where I really want to concentrate on is full complement, which means all the vacancies out there, workers that are committed to public service, and then to follow up on some of the recommendations and the findings, the many that are out there that have been issued before that we need to follow up and sometimes sit down and have conversations with people in charge and work with other departments and agencies. I have a lot of experience in performance auditing as well, which is not a common skill set, was not common to Delaware, and that's one of the reasons I was brought here. And that has a very wide scope. It can deal with numbers, it can deal with the way a program is performing. Sometimes it even deals with safety and well-being. One of the areas of particular concern down south is drinking water and well water. So I just ask that you consider our backgrounds and do as your conscience calls you to do, and realize that I'm willing to stand up and do what needs to be done within the realm of the office. I can't promise that we would be changing where money goes. That's left with the budget process and so on and forth. But I would stand up and do what we need to do for auditing and investigating for the state. And I'd like to open it up to questions.
Great, yes. So does anybody have, we have about 6 minutes left. Does anybody have a question? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So can you talk a little bit about what the specific responsibilities of being the state auditor are?
Yes, ma'am, I would love to talk about that. So there is a wide variety of mandates. In other words, there's legislation out there, including the mandate for the office, but then it's all throughout legislation. And usually they use the generic word audit, which can be interpreted in different ways. Does it mean a financial audit, or performance audit, so on and so forth. Those mandates are covered, and when I came to Delaware, I analyzed them every year, pulled them down, analyzed them. Some are as specific as Teacher of the Year awards, and that's a mandate. So we need to do that, and we need to cover that some way. Other areas, though, come in, and this is where the biggest bang for the buck is. All studies have shown that your employees of an organization are the most valuable tool to making things better and to catching and preventing fraud. Now, does that mean everybody that calls in on the fraud hotline or gives a tip is a legitimate tipster? That doesn't always happen. So we have to be trained in due diligence and how to interpret whether this has some viability and moves forward and we do some work, because it's a very expensive endeavor. It takes resources from somewhere else that we might have been better served doing the work somewhere else. So we have to make sure that we're moving forward and doing it appropriately. Having said that, that can cover all sorts of things. We may end up doing a performance audit in lieu of doing an investigation. We had quite a number of tips that came in on means-tested entitlement a while back. And so we went off to the agency and down process issues that didn't recommend cutting the programs, but recommended changing the process to make it better for employees, make it easier for them to process and intake, and to give them a need to know where to go, instead of sending them to this office and that office and this office, and they don't really know what all they're entitled to. So that's an example of how we would discern through, and it is a risk-based process, and it also pertains to how many resources we have. Having said that, many of you may know or may not know, a lot of work is contracted, and it is possible to bring some of that work in once we're fully staffed. However, it's very cyclical, some of it's very technical, and you may not want to bring it all in. I personally wouldn't advocate for bringing in an actuary that's only going to work so many months out of the year at a very high salary, dollar salary, and then the rest of the year they're down, they have downtime. So there's reasons for contracting, and then sometimes it's best to do things in-house. So I think that's a pretty comprehensive answer for you.
Great, I'm sorry. Thank you. I think we have time for another question. If somebody has to have that. All right. Oh.
I think I heard you mention that the state auditor plays a role somehow in the problem with our polluted groundwater. Can you talk, didn't you say about groundwater, or you mentioned that the state auditor does more than just auditing budgets and stuff like that? So what would the role be with of the state auditor with the problem with our polluted groundwater that we have?
For those that are concerned with the groundwater, of course, there are federal grants from the EPA that deal with contaminated water and groundwater. There are also state monies that go for actually remediating groundwater issues, whether it be well water, so on and so forth. And also, if you follow, and maybe not many do, but the Government Accountability Office does studies of safety and well-being, things of those. How many people, we could perform a study of how many people in a specific area down south that it's been claimed are having significant water issues. We can go out, get the experts to come in and actually do a study to determine within a certain area how many people are actually have substandard water and what is the quality of that water. So if you know how to bring that expertise together with an audit, we can do a public report of those things.
Okay, great. And so if you want to take 1 minute and I don't know if you want to sum up anything? Or...
Yeah, I want to emphasize that, since I've left the office, I want to give you an example. There were 4 audit managers. 2 of them were CPAs. And it's disappointing that since I've left the office, there's an issue with, understanding the rules that a CPA and a CGAP and, all these designations, we have to follow these rules. We just don't come out and say, okay, I want to put this in the report. We do a lot of due diligence and things are very technically done and we have a lot of support. And then we get reviewed by outsiders that come in and review the quality of our work. And the number one thing to me is my professionalism, my reputation, and I do have a reputation. I do have endorsements from my peers, but they're more of a write it in a letter, like they'll write me a letter or write a letter of recommendation. That is very, very important to me.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. And next up, for the Office of Delaware State Auditor, we have Kathy.
Hi, and thank you for having me here today. I'm Kathy. I'll give you a little bit of background about myself for those of you who do not know me and have not met me yet. I'm a lifelong Delawarean, actually born in Kent General back in the day. It's now Bay Health in Kent County, but raised in Sussex. I'm a mother of 3. I'm a certified fraud examiner, a former investigator, a pharmacist, which is a scientist, we like numbers, which I am right now in the city of Rehoboth. So I believe I have a unique background and experience to be your next state auditor. And I agree, Kathleen and I have a couple things in common. One of them, we're both Kathleen's, I'm called a Kathy. But also something that you said, it is more than just about numbers, the auditor's office. So that is true. I've owned and operated 2 businesses for 600 employees, holding people accountable daily in the workplace, dealing with a budget that you have to stay within the means, and looking for ways to be more efficient and more effective in your office. The auditor, which going up and down the state, believe it or not, most people do not know what the auditor's job is. The auditor's job, according to Title 29 for the state of Delaware, is someone who hires professional staff and also will designate our folks that either receive or collect state money. Now that will include schools, fire departments, and nonprofits. So my background with nonprofits, which I currently serve as a trustee for Delaware State University, and I also sit on their ops committee, which right now we're working on an over $100 million dorm, a new dorm for the grounds. But Camp Rehoboth, many of you may not know what that is. That stands for Create a More Positive. Years ago, there was a lot of divisiveness in Rehoboth and eastern Sussex, especially with the LGBT community. And it got pretty ugly, and there were two people who founded this organization and said, you're right, it is a family town, it's for all families. So I am very proud to be a part of that organization, which has over 400 volunteers, by the way. It's a very, very good, inclusive organization and nonprofit. And also there's something called Meals on Wheels, Lewis Rehoboth, which gets meals to those who are inbound. But taking about 20 years ago, I was the founding president of a national award-winning nonprofit called Rehoboth Main Street, which changed the way you see Rehoboth today. We worked on a $32 million infrastructure upgrade program where we worked together with local, state, and federal funds, managing multiple entities, holding those people accountable, making sure that there were incentives and penalties on those projects. Treasurer for 8 years in that organization, dealing with our finances and accounting for that nonprofit. So I've had a background in nonprofit background that together shapes what this auditor will do in managing that office and making sure there's checks and balances. So you have a little bit about my background. It's the nonprofit, it's serving as an elected official. I don't know if many of you are aware, but for about a year ago, I uncovered about $1 million in overages for a municipal complex with 62 change orders. And what did I do? I made sure that I kept that in the public. I went on the radio every week, and I made sure that I held our officials accountable. And because of that, today we have a new way of doing business. We're wrapping up a $52 million project right now, and it is far more accountable and far more transparent than we were just a year ago. We now have updates at public meetings. We're invited into public meetings, and it also lets us know where we are, what the costs are, things originate from. So, if you want to talk about holding people accountable and transparent, that is me. Another thing is, I'm very proud. I have many endorsements. And some people might say, well, that's not a good thing because you can't be independent. Well, let me tell you, if someone's going to endorse someone, they're putting themselves on the line because they're now attaching themselves to you. So if I didn't do a good job, it's going to reflect poorly on them. So I'm proud to have insurance commissioner, people in the General Assembly, elected municipal throughout the state. And I just had more last week. And something that makes me really proud is the AFL-CIO and building trades just endorsed. So there's some literature on the back table because they know I've been fighting for working class families my whole life. I've had other people say, well, you've been serving for 17 years, you're a politician. You make $56 a month. I don't get a parking spot. I don't get health insurance. This is public service. You do it because you want to serve. You want to help those. You want to speak out for those who need a voice, who feel like they don't have one. And that's who I am. So, please look at my record. Please look what I've done, which I have proven results. And I believe we need somebody who is strong, who's independent, and is not afraid to vote alone like I've done for 17 years, if I do my due diligence. But we need somebody who can make a difference. And I'll tell you one more thing that I think is two more things that I think are very important. One of them is I have been elected 17 years. And I'd like to meet someone like me who does not owe one favor. I do not owe one favor because I'm an open mind. But you do have to have some of the background. You do. I've worked with the nonprofits. I've been a treasurer. I've been holding people accountable in the committee and the audit for the city of Rehoboth. So I understand how to manage an office. But you also have to be able to go and have a plan and go to the JFC and be able to inspire those to maybe give you funds to increase those resources, those needed resources in that office. There's a lot to be done. I've been looking at best practices, and so has our policy team, and talking to other state auditors. And I'm proud to say Pennsylvania has endorsed me as well because he's researched me and done the homework. We want someone who's going to get results, who's not afraid to stand up and be able to convey that and actually get a result. Because at the end of the day, it's all of your money. We're beholden to you, the taxpayer. And things have been going along, and I will tell you, I am looking to do a job. I am not looking for a job. So, thank you very much. Answer them. If I cannot, I also have some cards on the back table, and my personal cell phone is on them. I'm people, anything you need.
Okay. We have a couple of minutes, a few minutes for questions. Anybody have a question? One? Oh,
Yes.
I'm going to pretend we need a microphone.
Hi.
You mentioned you had experience as, I think you called it a fraud investigator. Relative to being an auditor, elaborate on where you did that, what your tenure was, what your position entailed.
Sure. So, previous to that, for about 10 years, I was an investigator, and I did work on some contracts with the firm up in Wilmington. And then recently, last year, after I covered the $1 million, I have a knack for this. I've always been able to be able to look at things and find out little red flags that show up for some reason. So when I found the $1 million, we continue to save our taxpayers' money and make sure that they were tightly controlled. I need to further this. It's not just a certification. You have to have certain credentials to be able to qualify to get accepted into this program, which I took in New York. There's 4 different exams that you have. I think it was more of a continuing education, which I continue as a pharmacist. I'm still a registered pharmacist that works. And that's where I went with that. I'd like to even take more courses and expand and broaden my capabilities, because this is a natural transition of what I have been doing and just putting it into some accreditation.
So this was during your career as a pharmacist?
Yes, I still am a pharmacist.
Okay.
Yes, I still am a registered working pharmacist. And actually, we just had our continuing ed last Friday.
okay. We have time for another question. Anyone else? There would have to be some. Yes.
Thank you. I know Kathleen Davies spoke about being an independent and
Yes.
being a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about your affiliation and why you changed parties several times during the last decade?
I've always been a Democrat in my beliefs and my practices. I have been elected 17 years, but it is nonpartisan. So I actually have never been elected as an affiliated party. I did change it one time for personal reasons, which I explained in 17, but I've always practiced. I've always been the one out there, whether I'm fighting for Planned Parenthood or LGBT community. I've always identified and been a Democrat and practiced those ways.
Have you ever been a Republican
Mm-hmm.
or independent?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We have time for another question? I know there has to be. Yes.
I just want to clarify, you don't have a CPA, is that correct?
Correct. I am not a CPA. I'm a pharmacist, a realtor, investigator. Okay? You do not need to do that for the auditor. If you look at Title 29, you manage
Yes.
and hire professional staff.
Yes.
Okay.
Just clarifying.
Okay.
Just a minute.
What's the CFE stand for?
That stands for Certified Fraud Examiner. Mm-hmm.
Actually, I guess I can include myself in a question, since we have another minute. So with that CFE, where have you practiced that? And
As I just answered, I had that designation more, when I uncovered the $1 million in overages and change orders. It's more of a designation, but you can't just, it's not something you just go in a background that's met and reviewed if you're accepted into the course, which I did meet that criteria. And as I said, I'd love to continue better due diligence and decisions one can make.
great, you have 45 seconds.
I do, okay. I just want to thank you very much. If anyone has any questions about my beliefs or my proven track record, we do have online tapes at the City of Rehoboth. You can see how I voted. I'm very strong. When you get in to be the auditor, you are really not a party affiliation. You are not a Republican. You're not a Democrat. You have to be independent because numbers are numbers. When you go to the doctor's office, you want someone who can be a good doctor. And I look for your support. And thank you very much.
You promised me that, you got me. I'm sick of it. Okay, we will also get actually 13 and a half minutes, keeping it fair, for everybody. And then we will do a quick 5-minute break, bathroom break, or snacks. So last up today, we have Dennis E. Williams.
Thank you. I'm Dennis Williams, and this race is and should be about qualifications, experience, independence, and a commitment to transparency. This is a constitutionally mandated office that is too important to be filled by anyone without the necessary. Now, I am a lifelong Delaware high school, but I went to the University of Delaware, got a bachelor's degree in accounting and in financial management. Later on, I went to Pennsylvania, where I have my master's degree in technology management from Wharton and the School of Engineering, Navy, as a civilian employee. And while I was there, uncovering literally millions of dollars worth of cost overruns, bad practices, and saved the U.S. government a lot of money, saved taxpayers a lot of money. I moved on from there and worked for Sikorsky Helicopter. Sikorsky is a subsidiary of United Technologies. Now, Sikorsky is a very big company. The budget of Sikorsky is $6 billion. The budget of the state of Delaware is $4.25 billion. So I have worked with large numbers across a large organization. And while I was there, I was implementing internal controls. This was after the Enron mess and WorldCom, where people were defrauded of money. And Congress put laws into place. Sarbanes-Oxley. I was responsible for making sure that we set those rules up, set up the implementation of those internal controls. You heard about internal controls a little bit. They are critical in being and understanding how to do the job of an auditor. So I saved money for the taxpayers, for the Department of the Navy, and at Sikorsky to make sure that those policies and procedures were in place. Public companies. I then was elected to the Delaware General Assembly. I served 6 years representing the 10th District on the top of the state. And while I was there, I served on the Revenue and Finance Committee, as well as the Capital Infrastructure Committee, the Budget Committee, one of the 2 budget committees in the General Assembly. One is Joint Finance, one deals with capital expenditures. And I was able to question department heads, hold them accountable for the spending that they had requested the year before and were coming back again. So I had been working with an understanding of the state budget, working with the state budget for many years, providing advice to others about what is in and how the state budget works. There is one other critical piece to being state auditor, and that is independence. It's critical to be any auditor, is that you be independent. That's why Congress put those laws into place. I talked to the governor a few months ago, and we were just having a conversation, and he said, I cannot get involved in this race. I will not get involved in this race, because as head of the executive branch, the auditor comes in and audits all of my departments and agencies, and it would be inappropriate, and it would be wrong to be involved in this, because the auditor must be independent. Professors at the University of Delaware and at Wharton have come out and said that the auditor, the state auditor, must be independent to be effective. I'm putting the public interest first. This is a matter of public service. This is a matter of using my experience and my background to uncover fraud, waste, and abuse. One of the important things that the auditor does, because there are questions about that, There are financial statements prepared by the state. They must be audited. They must be audited independently in order for the people of the state, and for the bond markets to have confidence in those statements. We borrow money based on our bond rating. That is, believe in our statements. We build schools, we build roads, we build bridges. All of that needs to be done, and that's dependent on that rating. The auditor must be independent for those statements to be. We have heard that endorsements, but if you listen to the governor, if you listen to financial professionals, it is critical to be independent. Seeking and accepting endorsements is wrong. This is an independent job. Seeking those endorsements, accepting those endorsements is wrong, and not understanding that that is wrong is even worse. Now, that is a statement of fact. That is what the governor said. That is what these professors have said. An email saying that this is a personal negative attack. If I say anything that's a personal negative attack, please feel free to correct me on this. It is very, very important to understand the mechanics and the operations, as Ms. Davis has said, that you need to understand accounting, you need to understand auditing. Now, I have also managed a large number of people. While I was at Sikorsky, I managed a staff of accounting, financial, and auditing. It is an important part of this job, but managing, hiring, understanding the people that you are hiring to do this work is very critical. There are several things I would like to open up this to questions, if you have any. Yes?
I understood, and Kathleen Davis, correct me if I'm wrong, her endorsement was from an accountant, and it was like an association of CPAs or?
I don't have public endorsements up on my webpage. I'm saying that they endorse me or they'll,
Would you
they're
your endorsement something that undermines independence? Because I don't understand.
No. Here's what undermines the independence. The role of the auditor is to audit the executive branch, the legislative branch, the judicial branch, all branches of government, all agencies, all departments. And in order to do that, you must be independent of the individuals who lead those departments. The governor has clearly come out and said he can't get involved because he heads the executive branch. It would be improper to endorse or...
You're basically saying that government officials can't.
Government officials, yes.
Okay.
And that is the issue here, that government officials should not be doing that. And whoever's running for auditor should not be accepted. Yes?
And just real quick point, apparently there is a black BMW in the parking lot with its engine running. Is that correct?
Yes, with a Harvard's mom.
With a Harvard's mom. So as you get up, we're all going to know exactly. All right, but we don't have to take away his time. Dennis is time, sorry about that. So, next question, please. Yes?
I have a question about uncovering fraud.
Yes.
That when you uncover fraud, what is the involvement of the state auditor in situations that you uncover?
The steps in correcting is to provide an audit report, but also, one of the things I think is also important is transparency. One, I would hold public meetings to let people know where their tax dollars are being spent, and if they're being spent correctly. Someone asked about water in Sussex County. I was approached by a couple of people recently talking about money that was allocated by the state, but allocated money to do studies, to do some things, but not all that money went to where it should have gone. And that is very critical in making sure, the budget is passed by the General Assembly. It is signed by the governor. It is the job of the auditor to make sure that those allocations, that money goes to where it's supposed to go. If it doesn't, then your information is wrong. And it also means you're not spending the money for the critical things like polluted water in Sussex County and across the board. You also need to be in this position honest and trustworthy. It is an assumption that the candidates for this position will be honest and trustworthy, and that their statements that they are making in public, on their websites. I'm looking for endorsements of elected officials, but I'm also not posting endorsements on my website that I did not get. So we have to make sure that those people are held accountable as well. The auditor, the candidates for auditor, must be held accountable for what they are saying. Now,
Struggling with this mic a little. Next question. Oh, I'm sorry. Right here.
Hello, what certifications or qualifications do you possess, such as CPA, fraud examiner, and things of that nature?
I have a bachelor's degree in accounting and in financial management from the University of Delaware. I have a master's degree from the Wharton School, the University of Pennsylvania. I have been working as an accountant for 35 years. I've been doing auditing for the Department of the Navy. What I bring to this is experience. Now, I gotta say, certified fraud examiner, when Ms. McGinnis lost the race for lieutenant governor and was looking for an office to run for, this was one of the choices. Had a relationship, had dated the current treasurer. So you can't do that. So, certified fraud examiner, you take a test. You go online, you can buy something, take a test. But if you don't work in that, it doesn't really do anything. They're just a few letters after your name. This is a matter of experience. This is a matter of having done the work, of having saved millions of dollars for the U.S. government, for large corporations. So you have to look at the entirety of the career, of the background, of the experience, and the savings that have happened, of who you have managed financial professionals in that office.
It has to be very, very quick, very quick.
I just am a little concerned about the tone that you have brought to this forum, and I'm wondering why you seem to think that this is going to serve your purposes.
Good question.
Yeah. You know, this was a tough call. I know. But I think that honesty is critical here. Honesty is critical, and there have been misleading statements. And when an email was sent out to raise money saying that I was doing a personal negative attack, this is not a personal negative attack. This job requires someone to have an accounting background. This job requires someone to understand what the job is. That is what I have said. This is about, do you have the qualifications or do you not? So it's important to know that. The auditor, unfortunately, this is not a job about making friends. This is a job about telling the truth and telling the hard truth and holding the elected officials and the department and the agency heads responsible for what's going on.
So are we experiencing mansplaining while we're sitting here? That's what it feels like to me.
It is not. I've been asked by a lot of people what this job is. A lot of people don't know what it is. This is an accounting job.
And actually, that does wrap up your time. I gave you 15 extra seconds for the BMW thing. So thank you very much, Dennis. One thing I will remind our candidates, and especially everyone here, of is at 11:45-ish when we stop and when we have the pizza here, we have a half an hour book set aside specifically to ask them one-on-one questions. So please do keep that in mind. I'm not discouraging any questions. I'm just saying keep in mind you can do some follow-ups at that time. I think that will be helpful. So thank you very much.